Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle is a game that on paper seems like the strangest concept ever. A tactical turn-based combat, strategy and adventure game starring Mario and the Rabbids, and on top of that it's not being made by Nintendo. I think we can all agree that when the leaks of this game got out, people just scratched their heads over why Nintendo would allow such a beloved icon like Mario to star in a game alongside the Rabbids of all things. And I haven't even played a Rabbids game before, but I certainly know what they are and what their humour is like. But when the E3 reveal came and we found out what type of game it would be and then we actually saw gameplay, I think most people were very pleasantly surprised of just how good it looked. And so I thought that when I eventually did get a Switch that I would pick this game up, and thankfully I am very pleased to say that this game has certainly delivered. The story begins in what I assume is the real world, where an inventor has created a headset that can merge two things together. And soon the Rabbids show up and cause chaos like usual, but one of them gets their hands on this headset and starts to merge things, creating Mario versions of the Rabbids and causing their time machine to suck them all away and somehow take them to the Mushroom Kingdom, and as a result it becomes all messed up and overrun by the Rabbids. And so Mario, along with his friends and Rabbid versions, led by the headset's AI Beepo, must set out to find the Rabbid with the headset in hopes of setting things right. And yeah, I know, it's a bit of a nonsensical plot, but really all the story needs to do is provide an excuse for why the Mario and the Rabbids come together. And granted, it's more of a story than I even expected for this game, and let's face it, more of a story than most Mario games have. And with this we begin the game, which is indeed a turn-based tactical adventure, primarily focusing on combat, and this combat is surprisingly deep and well thought out. The idea is that you have Mario and two other characters with you in combat, and each character on their turn can move, attack and use a special ability. But the strategy part of this game could not be more prevalent, since there is a lot to consider in the combat. For starters, the way you move your character is important, from using these pipes to get around or using team jump for extra distance. But also your positioning is key, as you need to consider whether you need to be behind cover or not, if you're vulnerable within a range to attack an enemy, and whether an enemy could potentially attack or flank you, and if you are close to your teammates or not. Attacking also needs to be well thought through, since different characters have different weapon types with varying ranges and damage outputs. Some provide direct hits and some will deal splash damage that can harm teammates if you are not careful. There are some weapons that you can use from a range like a sentry, or ones that you can use up close like a melee weapon. And you can even attack while moving by using a slide dash to deal a bit of extra damage. Each weapon also has a chance of dealing a special effect that can hinder the enemy in a certain way, such as Honey, which means the enemy can't move on their turn, or Bounce, which can send the enemy out of bounds for extra damage. But these special effects only happen depending on chance, so it's down to you whether or not you want to take the risk. Each character also has unique special abilities that can be offensive, defensive and strategic, like Mario's ability to give all nearby teammates a higher damage on their next attack, Rabbid Peach's healing ability or Luigi's power to increase a teammate's movement range, or Rabbid Mario's ability to draw enemies closer to him, and each of these have a cooldown time, so you need to consider the best time to use them. You also need to take in mind the enemy types you're up against, as well, as each enemy moves differently, attacks differently, and each has their own abilities. For example, there are these huge guys called the Smashers who deal a lot of damage and will move closer every time you attack them. Or these huge brutes that have shields so they can't be attacked from the front. And a lot of this planning is based around on who you pick to have on your team, and there are 8 characters to choose from, with Mario, Luigi, Peach, Yoshi and their Rabbid counterparts. Now, Mario has to be a part of your team, you can't change that, but thankfully he's a well-rounded character, and you have to have at least one Rabbid character on your team. I don't know why, but that's the way the game makes you play. Regardless, you need to think about your team selection carefully, since each character plays differently and each one is more suited to a different battle. For example, Luigi has quite low health, but he can move very far and has high damage weapons with a very long range. He's essentially a sniper, more suited to staying far back and attacking from afar. Or like Rabbid Mario, he's a fucking powerhouse but can be a bit too destructive and can risk damaging his teammates. And there's Rabbid Yoshi, who can be very destructive, but this higher damage is mainly down to chance of his special abilities. You really need to think about which characters are going to work best for the situation at hand and what works for you, and each character has their own skill tree with upgrades for their specific ways of movement and special abilities, so you can invest in the characters that work best for you. But the game really does encourage you to try and use different characters throughout the game, since no two battles are the same, with different layouts and enemy placements and varieties. And sometimes it's not even a battle, there's occasions where you simply need to reach a certain area or escort another character to a safe zone. There are sometimes special enemies such as boos and chain chomps to keep things interesting, and the game's mid-bosses and main boss battles really do spice up the battles and each need unique ways of defeating them. I know it all sounds like a lot to think about, which it is, but the game really does ease you into it very well, and it allows you to learn the different tactics, characters and enemies gradually as you progress through the game until it becomes second nature. And the planning is key here, since as anyone who has played this game will know, it is surprisingly difficult. Hell, the fourth world is brutal. And so you need to be very tactical and plan your movements and attacks out in order to defeat the enemies efficiently and keep your team alive. And thankfully, the game provides you with an ability to scan the area and each enemy's abilities so you can plan around that. And a lot of the fun is planning out and seeing your moves all play out in a wonderfully satisfyingly cartoony manner. And the game rewards you for careful planning, because if you keep your team alive and complete a battle within a certain amount of turns, you are rewarded with more coins to buy better weapons. And on top of these fairly deep battles, there's also the exploration of the overworlds. You move between the battles in these overworlds that, although are very linear, still contain a surprising amount of things to do. There's quite a few puzzles to solve to reach the next area that, while simple, are still very well designed and fun to do. And if you explore well enough, you can find tons of coins, special challenge rooms, and a bunch of these chests. And these can contain collectibles such as concept art, soundtracks, and 3D models, as well as power orbs to upgrade your characters more and unlocks for new weapons for you to buy. Once you beat the main story, there's still tons to do. Beating a world unlocks 10 challenges within that world that all range in difficulty and are more specifically designed battles, as well as a secret chapter in each world with more battles and rewards. And after each world, you also unlock a new ability for Beepo, allowing you to explore more areas and find more collectibles and chests. Around these worlds are also tons of visual gags with the Rabbids that, along with Beepo's commentary, are quite funny, and that's something that surprised me. Most people dreaded the Rabbids' silly humour wouldn't mix well with Mario, but their silliness is toned down here and it really doesn't feel out of place that much. The presentation here is also something to admire. Not being made by Nintendo and instead by Ubisoft gives the game a very unique vibe, very different from any other Mario game. It all looks so nice, colourful and vibrant, and the music is also wonderful. It's composed by Grant Kirkhope. I swear, this man can do no wrong. The game is also very polished. I experienced no problems while playing it at all. But I think the main thing that I loved about this game is that it's just such an ideal kind of game for the Switch. The worlds are structured into chapters with about 2 to 3 battles per chapter, and each battle, depending on what type it is and how late into the game it is, can range from about 5 to 10 minutes to complete. Because of this, taking this game on the go is ideal, since you can play a few battles then put it away and carry on straight from where you left off, and it has been my favourite way to play the game. So overall, I was pleasantly surprised by this game, and while it may seem that I'm being very positive, I'll admit that I don't think it's anything spectacular by any means, and there are a few things that did get on my nerves. The steep difficulty curve for one can certainly be a put-off, and yes, I know the game does give you the option of an easy mode, and I actually ended up using it quite a bit, probably a bit more than I should have. The problem is, there were times where I felt like no matter how hard I tried or no matter how carefully I planned things out, that certain parts were just impossible to get by unless I chose the easy option, and I really shouldn't be feeling that. And the fact that it's very easy to make a mistake in this game, like for example, moving to a space when you didn't mean to and you can't undo it, and this happens more often than you think. And the story, while still nothing huge to begin with, never really goes anywhere, and once you beat it, it just very abruptly ends with very little conclusion. And also, despite the game's best attempts to keep battles fresh and constantly changing things, there's only so much it can do, and at times it can get a little bit repetitive and grating. But in the end, these aren't major problems, because what makes this game so good is the very strong and addicting main gameplay elements of the battles that I got very sucked into and really enjoyed. This, on top of other great things such as its idealness to the console and the presentation, lead me to give this game a well-deserved 8 out of 10. And it's nice to have seen this game work out and be much better than it has any right to be, since if you look behind the scenes of this game, you can tell how passionate the team behind it were. And their work has certainly paid off to give us one of the most unique and fresh Mario games ever, all from an idea that seemed almost completely unfathomable. But thank you for watching everybody, like and subscribe if you feel like it, and I'll see you next time.